So we shall start with the prayer. है प्रार्थना गुरुदेव से, यह स्वर्ग सम संसार हो, अति उच्चतम जीवन बने परमार्थ में। ना हम रहे अपने लिए, हमको सभी से गर्ज है। गुरुदेव यह आशीष दे, जो सोचने का फर्ज है। हम हो पुजारी तत्व के, गुरुदेव के आदेश के, सच प्रेम के नित्य नेम के, सधर्म के सत्कर्म के। हो चेड़ झूठी राह की, अन्याय की अभिमान की, सेवा करन को दास की, परवाह नहीं हो जान की। छोटे न हो हम बुद्धि से, हो विश्व में से ईश में, हो राम में और कृष्ण में, जगदेव में जगदीश में। हर इंद्रियों पर ताव कर, हम वीर हो अति धीर हो। उज्ज्वल रहे सर से सदा, निज धर्म रथ गंभीर हो। अति शुद्ध हो आचार से, तन मन हमारा सर्वदा। आध्यात्म की शक्ति हमें, बल भी नहीं कर दे जुदा। इस अमर आत्मा का हमें, हर श्वास भर में गम रहे। कर मौत भी आ गई, सुख दुख हमसे सम रहे। So today we have gathered to discuss the interim budget 2024, and as you all must be aware of, that this year, so far as taxation laws and GST, these laws are concerned, there are very minor amendments in taxation. GST, there are no amendments. So basically what I feel is that generally whenever there is budget, so in that case, we generally discuss as a professional, particularly tax professional, direct taxes and indirect taxes, because there are so many amendments in that. But since these things are not there, so probably this is good time that we exactly discuss the budget. Of course, it is an interim budget where vote on count is there for 2 months, and then it can be further extended for another 10 months as and when the new government will be elected. And we have our own managing partner Prakash Parwalji today as a keynote speaker. So what I would like, first I would like to convey him to please start the discussion.
So good afternoon to all of you. Yes. So today we are discussing budget. So I would first like to know from you, what is budget? क्या है? आप अपना बजट बनाते हैं? क्या बनाते हैं? कोई एक जना जोर से बोले तो समझ में है क्या बोले? You tell me.
Basically our plan, how we will like from where source we will earn and in which area we will do our expenditures, we will incur expenditures. It is basically our plan and achievement that we try to achieve.
So we are all talking about finances. So budget is should not be limited to finance only. Budget can be of your time also. Budget can be of any activity also. But when we talk of the budget of a country, so do you know what is the size of the country's budget? What is the size? आपका हमारा बजट 1000 रुपए होगा, फैमिली का लाखों में होगा, इंडस्ट्री का होगा करोड़ों में होगा. So what is the size of the budget of the country as such? Any idea? Any guesswork?
25
The budget for fiscal year 24-25 is 47.66 lakhs crore. 47.66. So around broader terms में हम इसको 50 lakhs crore का budget कह सकते हैं. So this is the total size of the budget. अब जैसा अभी तुमने कहा कि बजट के दो पहलू है, एक तो सोर्सेज ऑफ फंड का है और उसका यूटिलाइजेशन कैसे. तो जो सोर्सेज ऑफ फंड होते हैं किसी भी बजट के, हम गवर्नमेंट की बात करें तो वन इज टैक्स कलेक्शन, अनदर इज बोरोइंग्स, थर्ड इज कैपिटल रिसीट. एज एन अकाउंटेंट we know what is revenue receipt, what is capital receipt. So the taxes which we collect, direct tax or indirect tax, that is a revenue receipt. Each year we are getting this. Something is capital receipt, and there is also non-tax receipt also. Suppose government has made investment in the shares of a public sector company, so they are getting dividend. So that is non-tax receipt. So one is tax receipt, another is non-tax receipt. Then third source is the capital receipt as such. So capital receipt is what? If we borrow funds, it is a capital receipt. We have given loan to someone, and the recovery of loan is also counted as a capital receipt for the country's budget. And suppose we disinvest shares in a public sector company. So on selling the shares, we get a capital receipt. So these are the capital receipt that we get. So revenue capital receipt. So the estimate of the revenue receipt for fiscal year 24-25 is 30 lakhs 1,275 lakhs crore. So that is out of 47.66 lakhs crore. 30 lakhs crore is from revenue receipt. And the balance 17 lakhs odd receipt is a capital receipt, which includes recovery of loan, other receipt like dividend and others. That is around 2.90 lakhs crore. So that is our receipt, country as such. Now the next is the expenditure, where it is to be expended. So when we are borrowing, so one is the interest cost, which is one of the major cost. यदि हम अपना प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट के रूप में देखें तो हम क्या करते हैं, रेवेन्यू रिसीट में इंटरेस्ट का एक्सपेंडिचर डालते हैं. तो यदि मेरी 30 lakhs crore की रेवेन्यू रिसीट है, so against that the expenditure on interest is 11.90 lakhs crore. So how much it constitutes? Around 40%. तो किसी प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट का यदि 40% इंटरेस्ट में जा रहा है तो आप उसको कैसे समझेंगे, क्या समझेंगे? ये हमारी डेट रिटर्न हमारी बैलेंस शीट है. Because 40% goes of the revenue receipt towards interest expenditure. और उसके बाद में कुछ एक्सपेंडिचर होते हैं जो कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव है, सारी मिनिस्ट्रीज है, सैलरी है, एस्टैब्लिशमेंट है, ये सारे हैं. तो यदि हम एक्सपेंडिचर की ब्रेकअप को देखें तो जो हमारा एक्सपेंडिचर है, जो रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर है, दैट इज 36.54 lakhs crore, which includes interest of 11.90 lakhs crore and grant in aid भी इसमें है. और इसमें जो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर है, एक्चुअली इट इज द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर विच गिव्स इम्पेटस टू द इकोनॉमी. यदि हमारा कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ेगा तो इम्पेटस होगा इन इकोनॉमी में इन लॉन्ग टर्म. हमने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाए, रोड्स बनाए, एयरपोर्ट्स बनाए, सी पोर्ट्स बनाए, रेल कॉरिडोर्स बनाए. So all these are capital expenditure. So the total capital expenditure budgeted for 24-25 is 15 lakhs crore, which is more than around 12 lakhs crore of this year, which is to end on 31st of March 20. तो जितना हमारा कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ेगा it would give impetus to the economy. तो यदि हम इसका ब्रेकअप डालें कि टोटल हमारी जो रिसीट है, साइज ऑफ रेवेन्यू, साइज ऑफ बजट है 47.66 लाख करोड़, अगेंस्ट दैट our capital expenditure is 15 lakhs crore, interest payment is around 12 lakhs crore, and balance is all our revenue expenditure. है ना, उसमें कुछ चीज वापस आने का नहीं है, वो खर्चा ही हो जाता है. एंड देयरफॉर यहाँ पे एक टर्म आता है, दो टर्म्स के बारे में जानकारी होनी चाहिए. वन इज ए रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. सो हाउ डू यू सो व्हेन वी हम क्या देखते हैं, हमारे प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट में प्रॉफिट और लॉस की फिगर देखते हैं. बट यहाँ जब हम इकोनॉमी या कंट्री की बात करते हैं, यहाँ प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस टाइप की बात नहीं होती है. यहाँ दो तीन अलग टर्म्स में एक्सप्लेन किया जाता है. और पहला उसका होता है रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट, और दूसरा होता है फिस्कल डेफिसिट, और तीसरा होता है प्राइमरी डेफिसिट. सो व्हाट इज रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट? रेवेन्यू रिसीट माइनस रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर इज रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. तो हमारी जो रेवेन्यू रिसीट है दैट इज 30 लाख करोड़, और जो हमारा रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर है दैट इज 36 लाख करोड़. तो 6 लाख करोड़ इज योर रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. बट एक जो टर्म है दैट इज फिस्कल डेफिसिट. सो व्हाट इज फिस्कल डेफिसिट? रेवेन्यू रिसीट प्लस कैपिटल रिसीट minus recovery of loan and minus recovery of loan, and revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. So revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus revenue receipt minus recovery of loan minus other capital receipt. तो बोरोइंग इसमें शामिल हो गई, क्योंकि यहाँ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर भी डाल रहे हैं, तो बोरोइंग इज ए कैपिटल बोरोइंग, तो उसको शामिल करते हैं. बट रिकवरी ऑफ लोन जो होती है उसको एक्सक्लूड करते हैं, और अदर कैपिटल रिसीट को एक्सक्लूड करते हैं. सो दैट इज ए फिस्कल डेफिसिट. सो फिस्कल डेफिसिट फॉर द ईयर estimated for the coming year is estimated at 5.1% as compared to 5.8% for this year. तो गवर्नमेंट का थ्रस्ट होता है कि हमारा फिस्कल डेफिसिट कम होना चाहिए. They target it to get it down to around 4.5%. तो ये हमारा टोटल जो बजट का सिनेरियो है, दिस इज द एंटायर सिनेरियो ऑफ बजट इन टर्म्स ऑफ द फाइनेंसेस, जो हमारे को एज एन अकाउंटेंट जो हमें पता होना चाहिए. दिस इज व्हाट. और इस बार जो बजट को हम केवल जो डायरेक्ट टैक्स इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स के प्रोविजन से देखते थे, तो इस बार कोई चेंज है ही नहीं. देयर इज नो चेंज. बट एक चेंज जो डायरेक्ट टैक्स में लाया गया है, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में तो कुछ भी नहीं है चेंज. डायरेक्ट टैक्स में भी रेट फेट प्रोविजंस में कुछ चेंज नहीं है, बट एक्सेप्ट माइनर चेंज, जिसका कोई इफेक्ट बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है. केवल स्टार्टअप्स जो है या ऐसे फंड है जिसको स्टार्ट होना था 24 तक, उसको उन्होंने एक्सटेंड करके 25 कर दिया. एक्सेप्ट दैट देयर इज नो अदर चेंजेस. बट वन थिंग दैट फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर स्पेसिफाइड इन हिज बजट स्पीच, उन्होंने ये कहा कि 1962 से इनकम टैक्स में लोगों की डिमांड आउटस्टैंडिंग चल रही है. इनकम टैक्स एक्ट कब आया? 1922 का ओल्ड एक्ट है. 1961 में इनकम टैक्स का नया एक्ट बना पूरा, ठीक है ना. और बीच में चर्चा चल रही कि हम इसको डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड का नाम देंगे. उसका पूरा उसकी एक पूरी एक उस पर एक्सरसाइज हुई, वो आ भी गया, डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड आ भी गया, फिर गवर्नमेंट चेंज हो गई, वो सब डंप हो गया. तो 1961 का एक्ट है, और 62 की भी डिमांड वहां पे आउटस्टैंडिंग है. तो फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने ये कहा कि 2010 तक जो भी डिमांड 25,000 तक की है, हम उसको वेव ऑफ कर देंगे. और 2010 से 2015 के बीच की कोई डिमांड है तो अप टू यदि 15,000 है तो दैट वुड बी. बट क्या वेव्ड ऑफ होगा, पर्सन वाइज होगा, फाइनेंशियल ईयर वाइज होगा, इंडिविजुअल डिमांड वाइज होगा, ये जब प्रेस नोट आएगा तब पता चलेगा। बट मोटे तौर पे उन्होंने ये बात अपने बजट स्पीच में कही। इसके अलावा कोई डायरेक्ट टैक्स पे चेंज नहीं है। बट इस बार गवर्नमेंट ने पूरी जो बजट स्पीच है, बजट स्पीच रन्स इनटू 58 पेजेस, और फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने भी अपनी स्पीच को 1 घंटे में खत्म कर दिया, 58 मिनट्स में खत्म कर दिया। तो उस पूरी बजट का उन्होंने एक प्रेजेंटेशन बनाया, पीपीटी, एंड दिस इज द फर्स्ट टाइम कि गवर्नमेंट ने ऐसी पीपीटी बनाई। और मेरे ख्याल से हम उस पीपीटी को डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, नहीं कर रहे हैं?
We have taken part of that.
टेकन पार्ट। तो मैं उस पे ज्यादा नहीं चर्चा करूंगा, एक्सेप्ट 2-3 चीज मैं आप बताना चाहूंगा कि इस बार जो बजट का थ्रस्ट है कि किस सेक्टर पे हमको फोकस करना है। तो फर्स्ट इज गरीब का उत्थान और देश का उत्थान, गरीब कल्याण, देश का उत्थान, ठीक है, टू द पुअर्स। सेकंड इज टू द यूथ्स, उनमें एंटरप्रेन्योर स्किल आनी चाहिए। उन्होंने एक स्टैटिस्टिक्स दी कि कितने हमने आईआईटीज नए डेवलप किए, कितने एआईएम्स डेवलप किए, कितनी हमने नई यूनिवर्सिटीज डेवलप की। सो स्किल डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम से कितने लोगों को हमने स्किल किया। तो जैसे यूथ में स्किल आएगी, वो सेल्फ सफिशिएंट होंगे, वो इकोनॉमी में कंट्रीब्यूट करेंगे। सो दैट इज अबाउट द यूथ। थर्ड, उन्होंने फोकस एरिया किया वुमेन्स एम्पावरमेंट। राज्यसभा लोकसभा में भी 33% वुमेन्स का रिजर्वेशन है, और वुमेन्स का जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है वो भी उन्होंने हाईलाइट किया कि वर्क फोर्स में जो शेयर था 20%, दैट इज इंक्रीज टू 37%। तो जो हमारी पॉपुलेशन का 50% वुमेन्स पॉपुलेशन है, यदि वो भी इकोनॉमी में कंट्रीब्यूट करे, सो वी वुड गो टू द डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी इन 2047। तो जो टारगेट है वो 2047 है। शॉर्ट टर्म टारगेट, इट इज वेरी लॉन्ग टर्म टारगेट कि अमृत काल के जो 25 साल 47 में कंप्लीट होंगे तो हमारे को डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी बननी है। एंड लास्ट टारगेट इज अन्नदाता, फार्मर्स, और जो डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट स्कीम गई दी उन्होंने कि आपके खाते में 6-8 हजार रुपए पहुंचेंगे। तो अराउंड 34 लाख करोड़ हैज बीन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड, और गवर्नमेंट ने एस्टिमेट किया है कि इट हैज रिजल्टेड इन टू सेविंग ऑफ 2.70 लाख करोड़ डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर से। और इसकी शुरुआत अभी नहीं की, इसकी शुरुआत 2014 से कर दी, जब गवर्नमेंट ने नारा दिया सबका साथ सबका विकास, और उसके बाद उसको और ऐड किया सबका विश्वास, और उसके बाद ऐड किया सबका प्रयास, ठीक है। तो ये जो छोटे छोटे स्लोगन्स हैं, उस स्लोगन्स को वास्तव में उन्होंने इंप्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश की, और उसका रिजल्ट सामने है। कहाँ से शुरुआत की उन्होंने? स्वच्छता से, है ना, हर घर शौचालय, वहां से स्टार्ट किया। तो जब बात हुई कि शौचालय, तो लोगों ने कमेंट किया कि ये देश के प्राइम मिनिस्टर इतनी छोटी बातें करते हैं, बट वो उसका पर्सपेक्टिव था कि स्वच्छता होनी चाहिए, हर घर जल, हर गांव के हर घर में शुद्ध पानी पहुंचे, हर घर गैस, हर घर में कुकिंग गैस पहुंच जाए। तो ये जो छोटे छोटे प्रयास हैं, और हमारी 140 करोड़ की जो पॉपुलेशन है, उसके यदि लोवेस्ट पार्ट तक कोई बेनिफिट सरकार की पहुंचती है विदाउट एनी हिकअप, अभी तो इतने लोग इन्वॉल्व होते थे कि उन तक पहुंचता ही नहीं था। जनधन अकाउंट सबका खुलवाया। तो ये जो छोटे छोटे प्रयास हैं, उसका इफेक्ट आपको आज 10 साल बाद समझ में आ रहा है, जब उन्होंने ये कहा कि हमने 25 करोड़ गरीब रेखा से नीचे वाले लोगों को हमने ऊपर लेके आया। तो यदि 140 करोड़ में गरीब से नीचे वालों के 25 करोड़ को हम ऊपर ले आए, तो इट इज ए वेरी बिग कंट्रीब्यूशन टू द सोसाइटी। सो दिस इज द टोटल ओवरव्यू ऑफ द बजट। बाकी तो जो प्रेजेंटेशन होगा उसमें हम और बातें करेंगे, बट ओवरऑल जैसे हम बजट को समझते हैं कि किसको फायदा होगा, किसको नुकसान होगा, तो ये फायदे और नुकसान का गणित नहीं होना चाहिए, बात होनी चाहिए कि इकोनॉमी कैसे डेवलप होगी, इकोनॉमी कैसे रोबोस्ट होगी, कैसे इकोनॉमी से एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होगा, कैसे सब लोग इकोनॉमी को डेवलप करने में कंट्रीब्यूशन करेंगे। तो वो जो थॉट है, जो शुरुआत की गई, उसका अब रिजल्ट सबको देखने में आ रहा है। और यहाँ तक बात आई कि जो जीएसटी आया 2017 में, जो करीबन 80,000 करोड़ का शुरुआत में कलेक्शन था, दैट हैज डबल टू 1.66 लाख करोड़ पर मंथ। तो वहां से जब हमने उसको टारगेट किया, तो जो रेवेन्यू थे इनकम टैक्स के, वो एस्टिमेट कर रहे हैं हम 20 लाख करोड़ इनकम टैक्स डायरेक्ट एंड कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स मिला के, which constitute around 36% or 37% of the total budget. So 36-37% is from direct taxes, 28-29% is from indirect taxes. बाकी borrowings है, ये है, वो है। तो in terms of percentage भी इसमें काफी बढ़ोतरी हुई है, काफी इजाफा हुआ है। और एज चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हम सब यदि इस दायरे से सोचे, इस सोच से चले कि हमको भी क्या कंट्रीब्यूशन करना है कंट्री के इकोनॉमी में, सो देयर इज नो डाउट कि हम 47 में भी कुछ भी है डेवलप्ड नेशन। हम अभी वी हैव क्रॉस 3 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी एंड वी आर अराउंड थर्ड इन द कंट्री और फिफ्थ इन द कंट्री। अभी फिफ्थ है, जिसका टारगेट है कि हम 2030 में थर्ड पे आ जाएं। सो फ्रॉम फिफ्थ टू थर्ड, हम पहले 10th पे थे, so from 10th we have come to 5th, and from 5th we are targeting the third position. So this is the overall scenario of the economy and the budget. You can start your presentation.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful insight and giving us the overview of the whole budget. Now we'll first start with the interim budget 2024, which was given by Finance Minister on 1st February 2024. First of all, for understanding the budget carefully, we'll first understand what is this interim budget. Why don't we say this is a union budget or this is a full-fledged budget? So starting from the right path, we are starting with what do we mean by the interim budget and how is it different from a full-fledged union budget. Talking about the same, interim budget outlines the government's anticipated receipts and expenditures until the new government is formed. As we all are aware that in 2020-24, our general elections are going to be held in the month of April and May, and after the general elections, the government is elected. So this interim budget is only for the interim period, or we can say that it is only for the transitional period for the previous government, and then the full-fledged budget will be announced. Means it will be announced in the month of July 2024. So talking about the difference of full budget, a full budget encompasses all facets of government finances, including the earnings, spendings, allocations, and all the policy declarations. Interim budget provides the financial details for all the transitional period, that is for the month of April and May till the general elections are held. And the full budget is strategic guide and charting the nation for the entire fiscal year. It is for the whole year. The interim budget is presented once in 5 years. So since the general elections are held once in 5 years, the interim budget is also announced once in a 5 year. The incumbent government presented the interim budget 2025 at the parliament effective from April 1st, 2024. And the new government, which will be elected after the general elections, will present a complete budget in July 2024.
This is called vote on account.
Yeah, sir, we are coming on the same term, vote on account. Interim budget is also known as vote on account, which serves as an authorization for incurring the specific expenditures. So one question you might have all in the mind, that if we have said that this is an interim budget, why do we call it a vote on account? There is a specific reason for that. The Election Commission of India has ensured that no government party, means no political party, can take the benefit or undue influence of the voters by announcing such major policy reforms or tax reforms in the interim budget so that the general elections results does not get affected. So since we are saying that there is no such major direct tax changes or indirect tax changes, there may be a reason that the election commission has ensured that there might be no undue influence on the voters and the major policy reforms or the tax reforms do not take place in the interim budget. Typically, the vote on account remains effective for a duration of 2 months, or it may be extended if the general elections are held after the periods. So this is the basic understanding of the interim budget and the vote of account. Talking about the budget, we will first understand what are the basic terminologies which are used in the budget. These are all the common terminologies, whether it is the interim budget, whether it is a union budget. These terminologies are used throughout the budget. Starting with the basic terminology of capital expenditure. As we all are finance students and all we understand that the capital expenditure is basically the expenditure which is done by any organization or any entity in order to acquire the assets the which provide benefits for a number of years. It does not get benefit for 1 year or a period for a small period of time. It gets benefited for a longer period of time. So in one word, I would like to say that capital expenditure is basically the expenditure on incurring on building the capital assets, which will provide the benefits in the future coming years. The next terminology used is contingency fund. Contingency, as the name suggests, this contingency means which is depending something on future or depending on something which will be occur in the future, means its occurrence or non-occurrence is depending in the future. So this contingency fund is placed at the disposal of president for conditions like there might be a war, for natural calamities or riots. The contingency fund might be utilized. The next terminology used is disinvestment. Disinvestment is also known as divestment. The recent disinvestment we have heard of is Air India, the major disinvestment. This Air India was earlier owned by the government, and then it goes to the private hands. Tata, it has gone into the hands of Tata. So disinvestment is an action in which the government sells its major proportion to the private sectors in order to give it the whole undertaking or a part undertaking that the government is not the sole owner of that particular entity. The next terminology used is economic survey. Economic survey is basically the annual report card of the economy. You might be wondering that economic survey, we have just written that it is presented just a days ahead of the budget. Why doesn't the economic survey comes before this budget? Or there is a catch over here. Normally, the economic survey is presented ahead of the union budget. Since we have already understood that this is an interim budget, so there is no such economic survey presented as of now. It will be presented ahead of our union budget. Talking about the next term, fiscal deficit, since Sir has already explained well the term fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit refers to the gap between the government's expenditure and receipts of the particular year. And the fiscal deficit is not necessarily bad for the economy. Like, for example, fiscal deficit, we understand that expenditures are more than the revenue. Since we all see the balance sheets, we see that if the revenue are rising and the expenditure are less, there is a profit. So what if the expenditures are more and the revenue is less? So it is a deficit. Whether it deficit wrong, the question might come to your mind, but this is not the scenario, because the fiscal deficit, it means that the expenditure is more. It means that the government is spending more on the economy side. Here we have already analyzed figures that there is interest income, there is interest expense, as well as capital expenditure, as well as revenue expenditure. But the overall fiscal deficit is not a negative terminology, but we have to take care of the level of borrowing. Since we have already analyzed that part, we'll also discuss it in the further slides. We'll come back to the fiscal deficit terminology. The next term is finance bill. Since we all have heard the finance minister's speech, once the finance minister has completed the budget speech, the Honorable Speaker of Parliament has asked her to put this item number 2 on the table. That was the Finance Bill 2024 that she had put on the table. So that was the finance bill that is tabled immediately after the presentation of the union budget, detailing the imposition, abolition, means all the alterations, all the impositions of the tax which are taken in the budget are put in the finance bill.
एक चीज इसमें ध्यान रखना है कि फाइनेंस बिल से टैक्स की रेट निकलती है. If you go to the Income Tax Act, you won't get what is the rate of taxation. Rate of taxation is always through finance bill. उसका जो section 2 होता है वो हर साल फाइनेंस एक्ट 2 नहीं हो तो आप टैक्स कलेक्ट ही नहीं कर सकते. न्यू अथॉरिटी टू कलेक्ट द टैक्स. तो फाइनेंस एक्ट का जो सेक्शन 2 होता है और टोटल फाइनेंस बिल के 30 पेज तो इस रेट के ही है, because that gives you an authority to collect the tax. So the rate is to be seen from finance bill or finance act. After the bill is passed, it becomes act. तो वो इनकम टैक्स एक्ट को यदि देखेंगे तो उसके एकदम लास्ट में फाइनेंस एक्ट का सेक्शन 2 के बारे में पूरी डिटेल आती है जिसमें रेट्स आते
हैं. So coming to the next definition, that is the primary deficit. Since we all have learned about that fiscal deficit, it is the total expenditure minus the total receipts, other than the capital receipts of borrowings and recovery of loans. So the primary deficit is basically the fiscal deficit minus the interest payments. So what does it mean? What if the means the expenditure means the deficit which we have calculated earlier, fiscal deficit, it is the total excess of expenditure over the receipts. But if we deduct the interest payments on the borrowings which we have acquired either from India or outside India or any other organization, if we deduct the interest payments, we'll able to find out the primary deficit. The next is revenue deficit. As the name suggests, it is basically the difference between the revenue expenditure and revenue receipt. It shows the shortfall of government current receipts over the current expenditure. Now we'll look upon the budget at a glance. Just like we have understood all the basic terminologies that are used in the budget, now we'll look upon the budget. First of all, as Sir has already discussed, what is the major size of the budget? The total size of the budget for 2024 is 47.66 lakh crore rupees. Last year, 23-24, original estimate was 45.03 lakh crore, and the revised estimate of similar financial year 23-24 has to 44.90 lakh crore rupees. This total size of the budget includes various line items. First of all, there is one side revenue side, and other side is expenditure side. In the revenue side, there are various receipt side and other is expenditure side. In the receipt side, there are various bifurcations. There are revenue receipts, there are capital receipts, and in the expenditure side, there are capital receipts, there are capital expenditures and revenue expenditures. In the revenue receipts, there are tax as well as non-tax revenue, which Sir has already explained as well that non-tax revenue is basically from the dividend income that the government earns from the public sector undertakings, and any other revenue other than tax that is counted in the revenue receipts. Here the line is also written in the capital receipt that it is loan recovery, other receipts and borrowings, and net of drawdown of cash balance. Is anyone wondering what is net of drawdown of cash balance? Does anyone know about that? So I'll explain that one. Net of drawdown of cash balance is basically the amount of borrowings which the government does from Reserve Bank of India in order to provide finance for general public expenditures. It takes its fund from Reserve Bank of India. That is said as net of drawdown of cash balance. The total of these two receipts comes to the total receipts. Now coming to the expenditure side, here it is the effective capital expenditure. Effective capital expenditure is grants and aid for creation of capital account. Grants and aid, what does it mean? It means that the central government has provided it to various state governments or various organizations. For example, it might be PSUs or some NGOs to might the government is funding. The capital expenditure amounts to those. The next is interest expenditure and other is revenue expenditure. The total of all these expenditure comes to the total expenditure. For finding the fiscal deficit, we have already understood that the total expenditure minus the revenue and capital receipts, other than the borrowings, comes the fiscal deficit. As Sir has already said, the Finance Minister of India has already mentioned in her speech that the revised estimates for financial year 23-24, it is 5.8% of our GDP, current revised estimates. And the budgeted estimates for financial year 24-25, it is 5.1% of the GDP. And the target of government is to bringing down the fiscal deficit up to the level of 4%. So the finance minister of India has said in her speech that if as we are coming towards the Viksit Bharat and we are inclined towards decreasing our fiscal deficit gradually year by year, and it is targeted to reduce the fiscal deficit to the level of 4%. So that was the brief introduction of the budget. That was on my side. Now Sandesh will take over the next part.
Yes, President. Till now, we have discussed about the budget, what is the difference between the interim budget, union budget, budget terminologies, and the size of the budget. Now I will discuss the other part of the budget where we will discuss about the collection of the government, basically sources of revenue, sources of expenditure in percentage terms. Second thing are achievement about the four focus areas as stated by the sir in the start of the class, namely Andata, Desh Ka Kalyan, Garib Kalyan, and empowering the youth, and fourth, Nari Shakti. And lastly, I will speak about the key highlights of the budget. So talking about the sources of revenue, as stated by in the chart, the main proportion of the revenue comes from the borrowing and the liabilities, which account for the 28%. And the other part is the income tax and the GST and other taxes, which accounts for the 37%. So basically, the main source of the revenue of the government is the borrowing and other liabilities, income tax, and the GST and other taxes. And if we talk about the sources of the expenditure of the government, the main part of the is also the same is interest payments, which accounts for the 20%. And the other part is the centrally sponsored schemes, central sector schemes, and the pensions and defense of the sectors. The main part of the fiscal deficit is only about the interest payments, which sir has discussed about the 40% of the P&L. Talking about the breakup of the tax collection as estimated for the fiscal year 24-25, more than 50% of the collection will become from the direct tax and the GST and the compensation cess. And the other part will be from the customs, service tax, and the central excise. Talking about from the non-tax revenue, dividend, interest, and etc., it accounts for the 3,99,701 rupees, lakh crore rupees. Now we will talk about the past data about the focus area, which was stated by the finance minister. First is the Garib Kalyan, Desh Ka Kalyan. Talking about the benefits, direct benefit transferred from the Jan Dhan accounts had led to a saving of around rupees 2.7 lakh crore rupees because of the elimination of the intermediaries, which was in there before the opening of the Jan Dhan accounts. Second thing, 25 crore people have been moved out from the multi-dimensional poverty. And third is the credit assistance has been given to the 78 lakh street vendors under the PM Seva Nidhi scheme. Swanidhi scheme. Second thing is the empowering of the youth. 1.4 crore youth trained have been under the Skill India mission, and the fostering of the entrepreneurial aspirations has given under the PM Mudra Yojana. Under the PM Mudra Yojana, financial aid has been given to the newly startups by the government. And the other is the opening of the new IITs, AIMS, and triple IITs. As seen from the graph, in 2014, we have only 16 IITs, but now in 2023, we have opened new 7 IITs. And talking about the AIMS, we have 7 AIMS universities in 2014, but now we have 22 universities in 2022. And talking about the universities, we have only around 723 universities in 2014, but we have now 1,113 universities in 2023. And third focus area is the welfare of the farmers, which is Annadata. Direct financial assistance has been given to the 11.8 crore farmers under the PM Kisan Yojana. Second, crop insurance has been given to the 4 crore farmers under the PM Fasal Bima Yojana. And third is the integration of the 1,361 mandis under the ENAM and supporting the trading volume of rupees 3 lakh crore. And the last one is Nari Shakti. 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans has been disbursed to the for only women entrepreneurs. Second, increased female enrollment has been education by 28% in the last 10 years. Third,
43% of the female enrollment in the STEM courses. And last is 1 crore women assisted by the 83 lakh self-help groups to become the Lakpati Didis. Now we will talk about the key highlights from the finance minister's speech. First is the vision for the Viksit Bharat. It is not a new scheme, but the mission of our Honorable Prime Minister of the Developed India by 2047, basically our 100 years of the independence. Second is the rooftop solar.
जब फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने बजट वो स्पीच दिया था तो एक लाइन सुनी होगी कि हमारी ये सरकार जुलाई के अंदर वापस एक बजट जो पेश करेगी उसमें हम विकसित भारत से रिलेटेड अपना जो भी एजेंडा है उसको पेश करेंगे। इसका मतलब कहीं ना कहीं सरकार के दिमाग में जुलाई 2024 का जो बजट आएगा, जो इस साल का आएगा, वो उसमें बहुत सारी नई चीजें आने वाली है, कंसिडरिंग the various developments to be done over a period of this Amrit Kal till 2047. So be prepared for that also. बहुत सारी चीजें उस एक लाइन से ही समझ में आती है कि they are going to announce so many things in July 2024 budget.
Going towards the second highlight is the rooftop solarization. Basically, after the inauguration of the Ayodhya Ram Mandir, our Honorable Prime Minister has stated about the solarization of this scheme. In this scheme, 300 units of the electricity will be given to the around 1 crore households, which lead to a savings of around 15 to 20,000 rupees annually. And the third is housing for the middle class, basically PM Awas Yojana. When this scheme was launched, the target was to build around 2 crore houses in the next 5 years. As stated by our finance minister, this target will be achieved in the near. So they have revised the new target to build around 2 crore more houses in the next 5 years, which will be help to deserve the sector of the middle class, which is living in the rented houses or slums or chals and unauthorized colonies, to build or buy their own houses. Third is the infrastructure development. Outlay for the next year has been increased by 11.1% to 11,111 crore rupees for the infrastructure development. This will account for around 3.4% of the GDP. Talking about fourth is railways. 3 major economic railway forms have been implemented. First is energy, mineral and cement corridors. Second, port connectivity corridors. And third is high traffic density corridors. And the other is 40,000 are general bogies will be converted into the Vande Bharat bogies. Because for the development of the nation, Vande Bharat is the new initiative which is taken by the PM for the railways. And the last is the withdrawal of the outstanding direct tax demand. The finance minister has proposed to withdraw the with outstanding direct tax demand from the year 1962 onwards, pertaining up to financial year 2009-10 to around up to rupees 25,000. And second is from financial year 2010-11 to 2014-15 up to rupees 10,000. It will lead to a saving of benefit up to 1 crore taxpayers directly. Now we will talk about the tax rate, which will be discussed by the Kritika.
I am Kritika Kandoi and I'll be talking about the part which we all look forward whenever budget comes. So I will begin with the thing that in this interim budget, definitely there are no major changes. There are only minor changes in taxation part and also only in the Income Tax Act, not in GST. So let's discuss about what is going already regarding the tax rates of different persons, like for individuals, HUF, AOP, other than cooperative society, BOI, and artificial judicial person under section 115 BAC. So the slab goes like up to 3 lakh, there is nil tax rate. Then from 3 lakh to 6 lakh, it is 5%. And then from 6 lakh to 9 lakh, it is 10. And from 9 to 12, it is 15. And from 15 to and exceeding, from 12 to 15, it is 20%, and exceeding 15, it is 30. And rebate under section 87A. For the section 115 BAC, it is the tax for 7 lakh rupees or 25,000, whichever is lower. It was earlier 12,000, 1,500, and tax on 5 level, whichever is lower. But now it has been changed in this interim budget. And no deduction available in new regime except standard deduction of rupees 50,000 under section 16 Family pension under section 57, deduction of amount paid or deposited in Agniveer Corpus Fund under section 115 BAP. And employer's contribution to NPS under section 80 CCD subsection 2.
Actually, there are two tax rates for individual HUFs, BOI, and these classes. One is the old scheme, and this is the new scheme. So this is a compulsory scheme, you can see. Unless and until you opt for the old scheme, you would be governed by the new rates. If you want to go to the old scheme, you have to specifically opt in the return. And what is the advantage and disadvantage of these two schemes, rate-wise or tax-wise? If you have deductions available to the extent of around 4.50 lakhs, then only old scheme would be beneficial. If you don't have the deductions up to 4.5 lakhs, what deductions? ATC 1.50 lakhs, ATCC A, or what is that sections? That LPS 50,000, housing loan 2 lakhs. So it comes to around 4 lakhs. Then you have some ATTTA, ATG some. So if all these things aggregate to 4.50 lakhs, then only you have some benefit to a income up to 15 lakhs to go by the old scheme. Otherwise, you can always opt for a new scheme. And this is a mandatory scheme, you can say, unless and until you opt for the old scheme.
And surcharge goes like above the income of rupees 50 lakh but less than 1 crore, the rate is 10%. Above rupees 1 crore but less than 2 crores is 15%, and above rupees 2 crore it is 25%. Now, can anyone tell me what is the maximum surcharge rate on special rate taxation income and dividends? Yeah, you're right. 15%. It is true. The maximum surcharge rate is 15% for special tax incomes and dividends. And as you all know, the health and education tax is 4%. Now, as sir already said, the old regime which we are going to look upon now, the slab goes like up to rupees 2,50,000, it is nil. From 2,50,000 to 5 lakh, it is 20%. 5%. And from 5 lakh to 10 lakh, it is 20%. And exceeding rupees 10 lakh, it is 30%. And the surcharge goes like above 50 lakh rupees of income, but up to rupees 1 crore, it is 10%. Above rupees 1 crore, but up to rupees 2 crore, it is 15%. Above 2 crore, but up to 5 crore, it is 25%. And above rupees 5 crores, it is 37%. Now the maximum surcharge rate here also is maximum 15% for special tax rate incomes and dividend. But here the rebate under section 87A is, as the normally goes on, 5 lakh tax on 5 lakh rupees income and or 12,500, whichever is lower. Now we will discuss about the tax rate for cooperative society. So it is up to rupees 10,000 of income, the rate is 10%. Then from 10,000 to 20,000, it is 20%. At exceeding 20,000, it is 30%. The surcharge is if total income exceeds rupees 1 crore, but it is less, but does not exceed of rupees 10 crores, it is 7%. And income exceeding 10 crores, it is 12%. And health and education tax is 4%. Under section 115 BAD, the tax rates for income of cooperative society, it is 22%, subject to the conditions. And under section 115 BAE, it is 15%, but it is only for new resident manufacturing cooperative society. Then the surcharge goes for both section 115 BAD and 115 BAE. The surcharge rate is 10%, and SAX, as you all know, is 4%. Now the tax rate for firms and local authorities are, tax rate is 30% and surcharge is 12%, where the total income exceeds rupees 1 crore. Now the tax rates for domestic company is, if total turnover of gross receipts in previous year 2022-2023 was up to rupees 400 crores, the tax rate is 25%, and in any other cases it is 30%. The surcharge is, if total income exceeds rupees 1 crore but less than 10 crores, it is 7%, and if total income exceeds 10 crores, the surcharge rate is 12%. Now, if company opts for section 115BAA, subject to the conditions, the tax rate is 22%. And if company opts for the section 115BAB, the tax rate is 15%, but it is only for new manufacturing company subject to the conditions. The surcharge in the above cases is 10% for both the sections 115BAA and 115BAB. For foreign company, the tax rate is 40% and surcharge is 2% where total income exceeds rupees 1 crore but does not exceed rupees 10 crore. And if the total income exceeds rupees 10 crore, the surcharge rate is 5% and health and education cess is 4%. Now, this is the minor changes which happen in this interim budget. So let's talk about the section 80 IAC, where the exemption benefit for starters for incorporating a company or LLP, the time limit has extended from 31st March 2024 to 31st March 2025. Now, here, anyone knows what is the section 80 IAC?
फाइनल के एग्जाम्स इन्होंने सीए हो गए वो तो बताओ पूर्वा
How many years? Out of
10.
तो पहले साल में रिन्यू 5वें में रिन्यू 8वें में रिन्यू
सर लगातार आपको भी लेने पड़ते हैं।
It is 3 consecutive years out of the 10 years.
और एक बार आपने सिलेक्ट कर लिया तो
You will get 100% profit exemption for 3 consecutive
It is
years.
not exemption. It is basically deduction. Deduction benefit on
These sections are deduction.
These are deduction sections, not exemption.
Yes, 100% deduction benefit you will get if you are a startup. And what does this startup means? Startup organization. It means you are contributing in innovation, development, deployment, and commercialization of new product, new services, new processes. This is what startup
And
means.
it has to be recognized by some ministry and courts.
IMDC. And under section 80 LA, income arising from the transfer of an asset, being an aircraft or a ship, which was leased by a unit of IFSC to a person subject to commencement of operation, the time limit has been extended from 31st March 2024 to 31st March 2025. And in section 92CA, which is faceless transfer pricing assessment scheme, section 144C, which is faceless dispute resolution panel scheme, and section 253 and 255, which is faceless appellate tribunal scheme for filing and hearing, the notification timeline has been extended from 31st March 2024 to 31st March 2025.
What is IFSC?
प्रॉफिट किया था एफएससी वाला
कितने सेंटर है?
इंडिया में एक है सर गिफ्ट सिटी है गांधीनगर में कुछ
And there is also a minor change in section 206C1G, which is a TCS section. And let me explain it. So here is the overview of this section. Let me explain it to you guys. If remittance for the purpose of education is other than, let me explain it. Like this section is basically for authorized dealers and tour organizer companies or tour organizations. So if there is any remittance for the purpose of education or medical treatment where any assessee has not taken loan from the financial institution prescribed under section 80E, then TCS has to be collected, like up to rupees 7 lakh, no TCS has to be collected, and 5% of the amount or aggregate of the amount in excess of rupees 7 lakh. But where the assessee has taken loan for education purposes from the financial institution prescribed under section 80E, the TCS has to be collected at the rate of 0.5% in excess of 7 lakh. Like for up to 7 lakh, there is no TCS applied. And if remittance is for purpose other than medical or educational purposes, then the TCS rate has been changed from 5% on the amount in excess of 7 lakh to 20% on the amount in excess of rupees 7 lakh. Any overseas tour program package under this, the TCS rate has been changed from 5% without any threshold limit to 5% up to rupees 7 lakh and 20% above 7. Now, if I have to conclude, can anyone please tell me what do you think about our interim budget? Like if you have to describe it in one sentence, what does our finance minister wants to convey? Anyone? Like what is our aim, vision, where our current ruling government or finance minister wants our Bharat to look upon as after a certain period of time? And Viksit Bharat. Viksit Bharat by the year 2047. So as GDP stands for gross domestic product, our finance minister says it is governance, development, and performance. Yeah. And what does FDI stand for? And our finance minister says it is first developed India. So we are aiming to become a Viksit Bharat, developed nation by the year 2047. And let's take an oath that we will serve our nation so for the betterment of its future and to achieve this aim. Thank you.
You have 25 years. You have to carry the country on your shoulders. So you are now 20, 21, 22. So after 25, you will be young enough to take the economic forward. तो ये सब आप लोग देखोगे, हम तो देखेंगे.
So we have till now discussed what was the aim of our interim budget, where we want to be in 2047. There are certain slogans which the finance minister has already given and we have already heard all about it. So far as tax proposals are concerned, there is no major changes because it is an interim budget, not a final budget. So in indirect tax, there are basically no change in custom duties. Every time in budget, there happens to be some changes in custom duty rates. So at this time in the interim budget, there is no change in the custom duty rates. So one thing is clear. So far as GST is concerned, because GST provisions are mainly decided by the GST Council, and there is a regular meeting of GST Council. So every 2 months or 3 months, they had a meeting, and then in meeting they decide what they want to change in the GST provisions, and accordingly they bring out that notification, circulars, or amendment in the rules. Only thing that they cannot change in the act. They cannot change the provisions of the act or the section. For that, they have to go to the parliament, and the parliament has to approve that changes. So in every budget, whenever there is any change in the act proposition, then it is to be tabled to the parliament, and accordingly parliament would approve for that changes in the act provisions. So far as this particular year's interim budget is concerned, there is only 2 changes which is proposed in the GST Act provisions, and you might be aware of what are those 2 changes. Anyone can tell me? What? No. Only 2 changes in the tax provisions, in the provisions of the GST Act, CGST Act. Any one of you? So the 2 changes are, first change is related to input tax distributor, input service distributor, ISD provisions. You might have heard the ISD provisions. What is that?
The person can take for the distribution of input tax credit when its invoice applies to its other registration.
So what happens? This is not a new concept. This concept was there in service tax also, and we have borrowed this concept in GST, the input service distributor concept. What happens? Suppose some industry is there whose head office is located in a particular city, say Mumbai, and their units are in 10-12 states. So whatever services the head office receives on behalf of any of the unit, suppose the service of auditing, or service, any other service, security services or maintenance services or advertisement services for the pan India business. So that particular services are received at one location, at head office location, but that services are being used by all the units and entities which are located across the India. Because head office is not doing any outward supply. So whenever he receives that services, GST would be charged by the vendor. So what would happen to that GST component? The head office is not going to give any outward supply. So what they say, so the unit who is providing that outward supply, so that unit should get the ITC of this service also. So that is a concept of input service distributor, and that concept is there in the GST law. अभी तक जो ये concept था, उन्होंने कहा था कि this concept is not mandatory concept. One can opt either for ESD, ISD distribution, registration, and can go for the cross charge also. So if head office have received some services on behalf of X unit, which is say located in Gujarat, and head office is at Mumbai, so head office can bill that for that particular services to its unit at Gujarat. So that is called cross charge, inter unit billing. Because in GST, every state has its own registration. So there are separate registration. So that cross charge was there. Now they say that instead of cross charge, whenever you want to distribute such type of credits, then you have to mandatorily go for the ISD registration, input service distributor registration. So whatever services the head office procure on behalf of some of the units, then you have to distribute that ITC to that unit, or for say 4 or 5 number of units, then on the basis of turnover, they can distribute that particular credit. So that change they have made in this proposals. They have changed the definition of ISD. They have changed the manner of distribution of the ISD in section 22. So this is the one change they have proposed in this finance bill. When would this change would be effective? Anyone can anything about that? कब से effective होगा? When the parliament, मतलब ये approve हो जाएगा parliament and the president would sign it. That would be the date or any other date? Because it is a change which is proposed in the CGST Act, and all other states have SGST. So that similar changes has to be incorporated by the states in their own legislative assembly. Thereafter, there would be a notified date, and from that notified date, this change would be made effective. So that is the one change. And second change is with respect to a penalty, a new penalty, that is 122A, and that penalty is for the purpose of non-registration of machines. You might have heard there are some specific provisions of tax collection in case of these tobacco manufacturers or pan masala manufacturers. इनके यहाँ पे, क्योंकि यहाँ पे ये जो पर्टिकुलर सेक्टर है, इस सेक्टर में अंडर इनवॉइसिंग या बहुत सारा माल बनता है और वो आउट ऑफ नेट, आउट ऑफ बुक्स वो सेल होता है. तो उनके लिए एक स्पेसिफिक स्कीम टैक्सेशन की दी हुई है. नॉर्मल तो क्या है टैक्सेशन, जो भी हम आउटवर्ड सप्लाई करते हैं उसके ऊपर हमको टैक्स लगाना, whatever it is rate, it is 18% or 12 or 20, whatever. But in these cases, they have put a taxation system based on the number of machines. So how much machines a particular manufacturer have in its premises? Say 10 machines. So based on number of machines, they are assessing the tax. So multiplied by 50,000 per machine. So 10 machine, it has to be 5 lakh rupees. No need to go. What is the manufacturing manufactured? What is the outward supply? What is the input? Nothing doing. So based on the number of machines, this tax is being imposed. So that special procedure was already there, because some of the cases the government has noticed that the manufacturers have not declared the correct number of machines. what number of machines they have installed in their unit. So it is 10 machines which they are working, but they have declared only 5. So they have made it compulsory that you have to register the total number of machines. And if you fail to register the machine and anybody comes for the checking or inspection and they found that the total machines are 10 and you have registered only 5, so they would impose a penalty of 1 lakh per machine. The penalty is proposed for that. And besides the penalty, there is a provision of confiscation, seizure also of that machine. Then they say if that penalty is deposited and the registration of machine is got done within a period of 3 days from the receipt of the communication of the order of the penalty, then that confiscation would be released. The machine would be released. So this is the specific provisions which they have incorporated in 122A penalty section. So these are the two changes in which is proposed in this budget relating to the GST provisions.
किसी का कुछ डाउट है, कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं या कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं? You have your option.
As sir mentioned about the machines, we have to tell the government that how much machines we have in our premises or premises. Sir, does it cover leased machineries as well?
So whatever machinery you are using for the purpose of manufacturing of tobacco or pan masala, may it be own machine, may it be leased out machines.
Those need to be,
That needs to be declared.
because the ultimate objective is that how much excise
Machine wise collection.
it is a machine-wise collection. So there should not be any difference between the leased and owned.
So I think you must have heard a very voluminous detection which they have made from this pan masala or tobacco manufacturer located in Rajasthan, Miraj Group, which is at Nathdwara. They are operating. So what they have, the department has done is, Miraj Group का जो प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है और जो प्रोडक्शन होके जो डिस्पैच हो रहे हैं, तो ये एक फैक्ट है कि इस प्रकार की इंडस्ट्री में 30-40% की बिलिंग होती है, बाकी सब आउट ऑफ बिल वो सेल करते हैं. What intelligence they have gathered and how they have caught that particular assessee that you are supplying X number of trucks in a particular month and not the particular 3 or 4 trucks which they have declared in the GST return. They have done that tracking system. तो जो ट्रक वहां से उनकी फैक्ट्री से गया, वो उस पे जीपीएस ट्रैकर से, और वो ट्रक का रूट कौन से टोल से वो ट्रक क्रॉस हुआ, वो सारे टोल के पास में सबके सीसीटीवी कैमरास लगे हुए, हर जगह सीसीटीवी कैमरा से टोल कलेक्शन हुआ है. उस टोल कलेक्शन का उन्होंने डेटा इकट्ठा किया और उस ट्रक का पूरा मूवमेंट को ट्रैक किया, और मूवमेंट ट्रैक करने के बाद में केस बिल्टअप किया जिसमें ह्यूज लायबिलिटी ऑफ टैक्स वाज unearthed by the department, and the Miraj Group has to deposit that tax because the evidence was so foolproof in that case that you cannot deny that much of supply they have made. So इतनी इसमें चोरी होती है, इस वजह से ये इसके ऊपर गवर्नमेंट की बहुत सख्ती है इस पान मसाला एंड टोबैको प्रोडक्ट्स.
So thank you. Now it's